The rain poured heavily as Leon sat in the dark car, watching the old apartment building across the street. The man they were hunting lived there, alone, quiet, unseen by most. His name was Daniel Cross. No criminal record, no family, no friends, just an ordinary man forgotten by the world. At least, that's what it looked like. Leon checked his gun, feeling the weight of it in his hands. Something about this job felt strange. The boss gave them no details, just a simple order: kill Daniel Cross. But why? Leon had been in this business long enough to know when something didn't add up. A man with no connections should have no enemies, and yet someone powerful wanted him gone. Beside him, Marco let out a sigh. "This guy is a ghost," he muttered. "No social life, no bank records, no work history. He barely exists." Leon nodded, still staring at the building. They had followed Daniel for a week, watching his movements. Every day, he did the same thing. Left his apartment for exactly 30 minutes, walked to a small cafe, ordered black coffee, and came back. No phone calls, no meetings, nothing. It was too perfect, too controlled. People like that always had secrets. Tonight was the night. They were going in. Leon and Marco stepped out of the car, their boots splashing in the puddles. The city was quiet, only the distant sound of sirens in the background. They moved quickly, entering the building without a sound. The hallway smelled of old wood and dust. Dim yellow lights flickered as they reached Daniel's door. Leon placed his ear against the door. Silence. No movement inside. He nodded at Marco, who pulled out his tools and started picking the lock. Within seconds, the door clicked open. They stepped inside, guns ready. The apartment was small and neat. A single chair near the window, a desk with an old laptop, a shelf filled with books. No pictures, no personal items. It looked like a place where someone lived but didn't belong. The air felt too still, too perfect. Leon moved deeper into the room, scanning for anything unusual. Then he noticed something strange. A thin red light blinking on the desk. He stepped closer and saw a laptop screen filled with numbers, names, and bank transactions. Millions of dollars moving between unknown accounts. His heart raced. This wasn't just a lonely man. Marco grabbed a folder from the shelf and flipped through the papers. "Leon," he whispered, "look at this." Inside the folder were names, powerful names. Crime bosses, corrupt politicians, international smugglers. Daniel Cross wasn't just a nobody. He was the man behind the money. He controlled the flow of cash in the underworld. A sudden click broke the silence. The sound of a door locking. Leon spun around, gun raised, but there was no one there. Then a voice, smooth, calm, and chilling. "You shouldn't have done that." The voice came from the intercom. Leon and Marco looked around, trying to find the source. The apartment lights flickered, then shut off completely. Darkness swallowed the room. Leon's grip tightened on his gun. "Show yourself," he shouted. A low chuckle echoed through the speakers. "You think you're the hunters," the voice said. "You were never in control." A sudden noise from the hallway. Footsteps, heavy and fast. Leon rushed to the door, but it wouldn't budge. It was locked. Trapped. Marco cursed under his breath. This was a setup, he said. Leon's mind raced. How? They had watched Daniel all week. He had no visitors, no security, no sign of knowing they were coming. And yet he had been ready. "You were sent to kill me," Daniel's voice continued. "But did you ever ask why?" Leon exchanged a glance with Marco. No, they hadn't. They took the job, just like always. But now, standing in the dark, surrounded by secrets, Leon knew one thing for sure. They weren't the hunters. They were the prey. A deep silence filled the dark room. Leon's heartbeat pounded in his ears as he gripped his gun tightly. Marco stood beside him, his breathing heavy. The door was locked. The lights were off. and the man they were sent to kill had just trapped them inside his own home. Leon's instincts screamed at him. This was wrong. Assassinations were supposed to be simple. Get in, take the shot, get out. But this wasn't a simple job. Daniel Cross had known they were coming. He had prepared for it. The intercom crackled again. "You're confused," Daniel's calm voice said. "You expected a scared, weak man. Instead, you walked straight into the lion's den." Leon moved carefully toward the desk, trying to focus in the darkness. The laptop screen was still glowing, showing transactions worth millions of dollars. Money moving through secret channels, feeding the criminal underworld. Daniel Cross wasn't a target. He was the power behind their entire world. Marco cursed under his breath. "Leon, this guy isn't just rich. He's the one keeping the whole system alive." Before Leon could respond, a sharp metallic clank echoed from the ceiling. A red emergency light flickered on, casting eerie shadows across the room. Leon's eyes darted upward. A camera. It moved, following their every move. They weren't just trapped, they were being watched. Marco lifted his gun and fired at the camera. The glass shattered, sparks flying, but the intercom remained on. A soft chuckle came through the speaker. "You're wasting bullets," Daniel said. "And time." The temperature in the room suddenly dropped as the air vents hissed. Gas. Leon yanked his shirt up to cover his nose. "He's flushing us out," he shouted. They had seconds to escape. Leon rushed to the window, but thick iron bars blocked their way. Marco ran to the door, kicking it with full force. No luck. The gas filled the room faster. Their vision blurred. Their bodies felt heavy. "Good night," Daniel's voice whispered. Leon felt his knees buckle. Marco collapsed beside him. The last thing Leon saw before everything went dark was the laptop screen flashing, one last transaction being made. And then, nothing. Leon's head felt heavy, his thoughts tangled in darkness. A sharp pain throbbed in his skull as he forced his eyes open. His vision was blurry, but he could make out a dim light flickering above him. The room was different, larger, colder. His arms were tied behind his back, thick rope cutting into his wrists. A metal chair beneath him felt freezing against his skin. Marco groaned nearby, struggling against his restraints. Where the hell are we?" he muttered, his voice hoarse. Leon's senses were still dull, but he could hear something. A slow, measured tapping sound. Footsteps. His eyes shifted, and there, just a few feet away, stood Daniel. He was no longer the quiet, unassuming man from the apartment. Now he was different. His dark suit was crisp, his posture confident, his face calm and controlled. In the red glow of the dimly lit room, he looked almost inhuman, like a shadow. Leon clenched his fists. "What the hell is this?" he growled. Daniel sighed and stepped forward. "You were hired to kill me," he said, his voice still smooth, eerily calm. "That was a mistake." Leon struggled against the ropes. "Just kill us already." Daniel chuckled. "Kill you? If I wanted you dead, I wouldn't have let you wake up." He stepped closer, his hands resting behind his back. "But I don't want to kill you, Leon. I want you to listen." Leon watched him closely, his mind still trying to piece everything together. The blinking red lights in the room, the high-tech monitors on the wall, the constant low hum of machinery. Daniel walked over to one of the monitors and tapped the screen. A series of numbers flashed. Bank accounts, wire transfers, offshore holdings. "Do you understand what you're looking at?" he asked. Leon narrowed his eyes. "You're moving money," he said. "A lot of it." Daniel nodded. "More than you could imagine. The people who hired you, do you even know their names?" Marco spat on the floor. "We don't ask questions. We do our job." Daniel smirked. "And that's why you're here." He crossed his arms and leaned against the table. "The people who hired you are making a move against me. They want what I have. But there's one thing they didn't tell you. Leon's hands clenched tighter around the ropes. What? Daniel tilted his head, studying them. They sent you to kill me, he said, his voice dropping lower, because they're afraid of what happens when I'm gone. Leon frowned. Why would they be afraid? You're just the guy who moves their money. Daniel chuckled again. Am I? He turned and walked toward the monitors, clicking a button on a keyboard. The screens flickered, and suddenly, rows of numbers appeared. Bank accounts, transfers, millions of dollars vanishing and reappearing across different countries. You see, I don't just move their money, Daniel said. I control it. Every payment, every debt, every bribe. It all goes through me. Without me, the whole underworld collapses. Every assassin, every drug deal, every arms trade, none of it works without my systems. Leon's stomach turned. They had been sent to kill the one man who held everything together. Daniel walked back toward them, placing a hand on Leon's shoulder. You're probably wondering, why you? He said, voice smooth and calculated. Why send you to kill me when I know everything about them? Leon's jaw tightened. You tell me. Daniel tilted his head slightly, watching him. Because they want me out of the way. But they can't just kill me. If I die without giving up my knowledge, their money disappears. Their deals fall apart. Their empire crumbles. I built their system, but I never gave them the key. Leon's mind raced. He knew the people they worked for were powerful, but he had always believed they were the ones running the show. Now Daniel was telling him otherwise. So, they want you dead, but they also need you. Daniel smiled. Exactly. And they think you're the perfect pawns for the job. Disposable. Just another set of killers sent to do their dirty work. But if I die, they all go down with me. They don't realize that yet. And neither do you. Marco let out a breath. So why are we tied up? Daniel leaned in close. Because I need to know if you're as smart as you seem. He turned to the monitors, pressing a few buttons. The screens flickered, and suddenly, a list of names and numbers appeared. You see, I know every transaction, every payment, every betrayal. And I know exactly who ordered your hit on me. Leon swallowed hard, staring at the screen. He recognized some of the names. Powerful names. Dangerous names. Daniel continued. The people you work for, they want to remove me. And you were their weapons. But I'm giving you a choice, gentlemen. Work for me, or join the long list of men who made the wrong call. Leon exhaled, his mind racing. This wasn't just another job. This was something bigger, something far deadlier. He could feel it in his gut. Marco let out a nervous chuckle. So, what happens if we say no? Daniel smirked. Then you won't live long enough to regret it. The red light above them flickered again. Heavy footsteps echoed outside the locked door. Someone was coming. The real enemy. The people who had set them up. Daniel tilted his head slightly. Time's up, he said. And then the door burst open. The door exploded open, slamming against the wall. Leon and Marco tensed in their chairs, hands still tied behind their backs. 4 men stormed into the room, all dressed in black, their guns raised. Their faces were hidden behind masks, but Leon didn't need to see their expressions. He knew exactly what this was. Cleaners, sent to finish the job. Daniel didn't move. He stood perfectly still, hands clasped behind his back, watching the intruders with a calm, almost amused expression, like he had been expecting them. One of the masked men stepped forward, gun aimed directly at Daniel's chest. His voice was cold and sharp. You know why we're here. Daniel exhaled slowly, then smiled. Of course I do. Leon's mind was racing. This wasn't just a simple hit anymore. This was something much bigger, much deadlier. The people who hired them had never planned for them to walk away. Leon and Marco weren't just pawns. They were loose ends. And loose ends got tied up. The gunman took another step forward. "You've had your fun, Cross," he said. "But it's over. There's no way out." Daniel didn't flinch. "That's where you're wrong." The second the words left his mouth, the lights cut out. Darkness swallowed the room. Then, chaos. A loud crack echoed as Daniel flipped the chair in front of him, using it as a shield. A gun fired. The muzzle flash lit up the room for half a second. Leon saw a blur of movement, Daniel moving faster than a man his age should be able to. A scream. A body hit the floor. Leon struggled against his ropes. If he didn't get free now, they were dead. Another gunshot. Another flash of light. Marco grunted, twisting in his chair. "Leon, move," he shouted. The room pulsed with flickering red light. One of the gunmen lay motionless on the ground. The others had split up, moving fast, firing wildly. They weren't trained for this. They were panicking. And Daniel. He was hunting them. Leon could barely track his movements in the dark. A shadow shifting between shadows. A silent predator. 1 second he was in front of them. The next he was behind. Another shout. Another gunman went down. Leon felt his chair tip as Marco kicked him sideways. The fall hurt, but it gave him what he needed. He twisted his wrists, forcing the rope against the sharp edge of the broken chair leg. His skin burned, but he didn't stop. He couldn't stop. Marco was doing the same, using his strength to snap the weakened rope around his wrists. "Come on," he gritted out. Leon's ropes finally gave way. He yanked them free, ignoring the sting of torn skin. He was up in an instant. Only 2 gunmen were left standing. They were backing toward the door now, breathing heavy, their confidence shattered. Daniel stepped forward, moving with deliberate, deadly ease. He picked up one of the fallen guns from the floor and aimed it at the remaining men. "Run," he said simply. They didn't hesitate. They bolted through the door, disappearing into the hall. The sound of their footsteps faded. They had come in to kill a defenseless man. They had left running for their lives. Leon rubbed his wrists, still trying to process everything. What the hell was that? He breathed. Daniel turned to him, still perfectly composed. He tucked the gun into his belt and adjusted his cuffs like nothing had happened. "That," he said, "was your first lesson." Marco let out a dry laugh, shaking his head. "What, that you're some kind of assassin accountant?" Daniel smirked. "Something like that." He turned to the computer, tapping a few keys. The screens flickered again, revealing live security feeds from across the city. "But we don't have time for jokes," he continued. "They know you're alive now, which means we have a problem." Leon exhaled sharply. A problem. He gestured to the unconscious and dead men on the floor. "You think?" Daniel ignored him. "Your employers sent you to kill me. Now they'll assume you're either dead, or worse, that you've switched sides." He turned back to them, his face deadly serious. "And if they think you've switched sides, they'll come after you." Marco ran a hand through his hair. "Great, just great." Leon folded his arms. "So what now?" Daniel's eyes gleamed in the dim red light. "Now," he smiled, but there was nothing friendly about it. "Now we make them regret ever trying to play this game." Leon felt something shift in his gut. This wasn't just a job anymore. This was war. Leon's heart was still pounding. The air smelled like gunpowder, sweat, and blood. The bodies on the floor weren't moving. The red light from the monitors painted everything in an eerie glow. Marco was breathing heavily beside him, still processing what had just happened. But Daniel, he looked perfectly calm, like this was just another day for him. Leon clenched his fists. "So what's the plan? We just wait for them to send more guys to kill us." Daniel smirked. "No, we don't wait," he said. "We strike first." Marco scoffed. "You're talking about going after them. The people who run this entire system." Daniel turned back to the monitors, his fingers dancing across the keyboard. Screens flickered, revealing bank accounts, offshore transactions, private security feeds. These people think they control everything, Daniel said. They don't. I do. Leon stepped closer, scanning the numbers on the screen. Millions of dollars were moving in real time. Huge payments being sent, disappearing into hidden accounts. Marco narrowed his eyes. What are we looking at? Daniel didn't turn around. Their money, he said simply. Every crime they fund, every assassin they hire, every politician they bribe, it all goes through here. He tapped the screen. And I can take it away. Leon's mind raced. You're saying you can bankrupt them? Daniel smiled. Oh, not just bankrupt them. I can erase them. He leaned back against the desk. These men built their empire on trust. Trust that their money is safe. Trust that their secrets are hidden. But once that trust is gone, he let the sentence hang in the air. Marco exhaled. They'll tear each other apart. Daniel nodded. Exactly. Leon felt a chill run through him. This wasn't just about survival anymore. This was about burning an entire empire to the ground. He ran a hand through his hair. So what do you need us to do? Daniel finally turned to face them. You two were supposed to be disposable, he said. They sent you to do a job, then planned to kill you to cover their tracks. But now, you're ghosts. They don't know if you're alive or dead. That gives us an advantage. Leon frowned. How? Daniel's smirk returned. Because we're going to make them think you finished the job. Marco raised an eyebrow. You want us to tell them you're dead? Daniel nodded. We stage my death. Let them believe their plan worked. They'll start celebrating, thinking they've won. His voice lowered. That's when we strike. Leon exchanged a look with Marco. It was insane. Suicidal. But it was also their only way out. Marco sighed, rubbing his face. All right. Let's say we do this. What happens after? Daniel's smile faded. Then we go after the man who ordered the hit. The one at the top. He turned back to the monitors, tapping a few keys. A single name appeared on the screen. Leon felt his stomach tighten. He recognized the name. A legend in the underworld. A ghost. A man so powerful that even assassins spoke about him in whispers. Marco read the name out loud, his voice barely above a whisper. Dante Valera. Silence filled the room. Everyone knew Valera. The king of the underworld. The man no one crossed. The man no one even met. Leon exhaled. You're serious. Daniel's gaze was cold. Very. Marco let out a nervous chuckle. You do realize this is suicide, right? Daniel's expression didn't change. Only if we fail. Leon looked at the screen, then at Daniel. The man they had come to kill had just turned their entire world upside down. Now, they weren't hitmen anymore. They were about to become the hunters. Leon tightened his jaw. All right, let's do this. Daniel smiled. Then let's begin. Leon sat in the back seat of the black SUV, his fingers tapping against his knee. His heart pounded in his chest, but his face remained calm. Marco was beside him, checking the burner phone in his hand, waiting for the signal. The streets outside were quiet, but Leon knew that wouldn't last. They were deep in enemy territory now. Across the street, inside a luxury hotel, some of the most dangerous men in the underworld were gathered. They believed their plan had worked. That Daniel was dead. That they had won. They had no idea what was coming. Marco's phone vibrated once. A single message appeared. Go. Leon tightened his grip on his gun and exhaled. Let's do this. Marco nodded and pushed open the door. The two men stepped out into the cold night air. Across the street, their target was waiting. Dante Valera, the man who had ordered their deaths. The hotel was crawling with guards. Armed men patrolled the entrance, their eyes scanning for threats. But none of them were looking for Leon or Marco, because as far as they knew, they were dead. Leon pulled up the hood of his jacket and walked casually toward the entrance. Marco followed a few steps behind. They weren't just here to kill someone. They were here to send a message. The doormen barely glanced at them as they stepped inside. The lobby was grand. Polished marble floors, golden chandeliers, soft jazz playing in the background. It was a place built for men who thought they were untouchable. Not tonight. Leon kept his pace steady as he walked toward the elevator. A security guard glanced at him, his brow furrowing slightly, but before he could say anything, "Kurai KK." The lights flickered. The lobby went dark for a single second before the backup generators kicked in. Marco smirked. Right on time. The power cut was Daniel's doing. A small warning. A sign that control was slipping from their hands. Leon stepped into the elevator and pressed the button for the top floor. The penthouse, where Dante Valera was waiting. As the doors slid shut, Marco exhaled sharply. This is insane. Leon smirked. Yeah, but so is Daniel. The elevator dinged as it reached the top floor. The doors slid open. Two men stood outside, guns at their sides. Their eyes widened in shock. Leon moved first. A gunshot. A scream. One guard dropped instantly. Marco took care of the other, silencing him before he could react. Leon stepped over the bodies and moved toward the double doors at the end of the hall. They were heavy, reinforced, but Daniel had already sent them the code. Leon typed it in. The lock clicked. Marco exhaled. Showtime. Leon pushed open the doors, and there, sitting in a leather chair, sipping a glass of whiskey, was Dante Valera. He didn't look surprised. He didn't even flinch. He simply smiled. "I was wondering when you'd show up," Dante said, swirling the amber liquid in his glass. His voice was deep, smooth, confident. "I assume Daniel sent you." Leon didn't answer. He raised his gun. Dante chuckled. "Oh, don't be so dramatic." He leaned back in his chair. "If Daniel was really dead, you wouldn't be standing here right now." Marco frowned. "You knew?" Dante smirked. "Of course I knew. I sent those men to kill him knowing they would fail." He took a slow sip of his drink before placing the glass down. "And now here you are. Like I planned." Leon's stomach twisted. Something was wrong. Very wrong. Dante's eyes gleamed. "You think you're in control?" he asked. "You think Daniel is in control?" He gestured toward the window. "Look outside." Leon hesitated. Then he turned, and his blood ran cold. Across the city, buildings were lighting up. Not with regular lights, with explosions. Marco cursed under his breath. "What the hell is this?" Dante leaned forward, resting his elbows on his knees. "A reset," he said. "You thought Daniel was the mastermind. You thought you could take me down." He shook his head. "I've been 10 steps ahead this whole time." Leon's grip tightened on his gun. "You're bluffing." Dante smiled. "Am I?" The foam on the table buzzed. Dante picked it up and turned the screen toward them. Leon's stomach dropped. It was Daniel. Bound. Gagged. A gun to his head. Dante smirked. "Now, let's talk." Leon's grip tightened on his gun. The room suddenly felt smaller, the air heavier. He stared at the phone screen, at Daniel, bound, gagged, and at Dante's mercy. Marco cursed under his breath. This wasn't the plan. Dante smirked, tapping the phone screen lazily. Plans change. Leon's mind raced. Daniel had been 10 steps ahead of everyone, but now he was the one in chains, which meant they were completely exposed. Dante leaned back in his chair, completely relaxed. "You thought you were playing the game," he said, "but you never understood the rules." He lifted his drink, taking a slow sip before continuing. "You see, Daniel isn't the only man who moves money in the underworld. He's just the most arrogant." Leon exchanged a glance with Marco. This wasn't a negotiation. It was a trap. Dante placed the glass down with a soft clink. "Here's what's going to happen," he said. "You're going to put those guns away, walk out of here, and disappear. You're going to let me finish what I started." Marco scoffed. "Or what?" Dante smiled. "Or Daniel dies. And trust me, I'll make sure it's slow." Leon's jaw clenched. He wasn't an idiot. Dante didn't just want Daniel dead. He wanted to break him first. And if they walked out now, they wouldn't just be leaving Daniel to die. They'd be giving Dante complete control. Leon took a slow breath. "You think you're untouchable." Dante spread his arms. "I know I am." Leon's gun didn't waver. His mind raced. Think, think, think. They had come here to flip the board, but Dante had flipped it on them instead. Unless. His eyes flickered to the phone. To Daniel. To the silent message hidden in the image. The ropes around Daniel's wrists. They were loose. The gag barely tied. Leon's pulse spiked. It was a trick. Dante thought he was in control. But Daniel was still playing the game. Leon forced himself to relax, lowering his gun slightly. "All right," he said slowly. "We'll walk away." Marco shot him a sharp look. Leon gave him a barely noticeable nod. "Trust me." Dante chuckled. Smart choice. He reached for his phone again, probably to signal his men to let them go. That was his mistake. Because the second his eyes dropped to the screen, Leon moved. Bang. A single gunshot echoed through the room. Dante's phone exploded into pieces. Dante flinched, knocking over his drink. "You little." Before he could react, Marco lunged. He grabbed Dante by the collar, slamming him against the desk. Papers, cash, and a silver pistol clattered to the floor. Leon grabbed the phone's shattered remains, flipping the screen over. The call was still connected. He pressed a button, switching it to speaker. A muffled chuckle came through the line. Then Daniel's voice, calm and amused. "You took your time." Dante's eyes widened. "What?" Leon smirked. "You really thought you won, huh?" Dante snarled, trying to reach for the fallen gun, but Marco slammed his head against the desk again. Daniel's voice continued. "Nice theatrics, Dante, but I never let amateurs play me. The second you captured me, you lost." A pause. Then, checkmate. Outside, a deafening explosion erupted. The entire building shook. Leon grabbed the edge of the desk to steady himself. He looked out the window. Across the city, multiple buildings were going dark. Not on fire. Not destroyed. Hacked. Dante's empire wasn't exploding. It was collapsing. His bank accounts, his security systems, his entire network, gone. Daniel had never been the one in danger. Dante was. The realization hit Dante like a bullet. His breath quickened. No, 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 no. He looked around wildly, like he could stop it somehow. "I built this. Leon stepped forward, pressing his gun to Dante's forehead. "Not anymore." Dante's mouth opened, maybe to beg, maybe to threaten. Leon didn't care. Bang. Dante Valera, the king of the underworld, slumped lifelessly to the floor. Marco exhaled. Finally. Leon picked up the silver pistol from the floor, inspecting it. "Fancy." Daniel's voice crackled through the line again. "Is he dead?" Leon glanced at Dante's unmoving body. "Very." A soft chuckle. "Good." Outside, sirens wailed. The entire city was in chaos. Marco sighed. "So what now?" Leon smirked. "Now." He looked out the window, at the burning empire below. "Now, we disappear." The game was over, and they had won.